Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, good morning. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ramona Angelescu Nakvi. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the GDN, the Global Development Network. And it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you today on behalf of our two organizations. It's been a joy to co-design and co-host this event, Evidence for Development, What Works Global Summit. We have over 900 people registered for the event, so tremendous interest from 91 countries. There are some of the large contingents from some of the usual suspects from India, China, US, UK, but also people from literally all corners of the world. From Venezuela, Argentina, and Peru and Ecuador to Ethiopia, Uganda, Nigeria, all the way to Georgia, the Philippines, Laos, or Mongolia. Of course, we would have liked to have all 900 of you in person, and I think we're all longing for that opportunity to be together, share ideas, meet old friends, make new acquaintances, have lively debates face-to-face, or network informally during breaks and continue the lively debates that sometimes start in a session. So the large number of people who have registered for the event shows that there is tremendous interest in this theme of evidence for development. We saw this in the spring as well when we launched our open call. There was an open call for panels, for individual presentations, and for posters. And there was tremendous response, which we were very happy to see. The shortlisted panels and individual presentations have been included in the program, and you will be able to see them during the next few days over the course of the conference. And the shortlisted posters are in a booth in the expo area, and you'll be able to vote for your favorite one as well, and we will announce that at the very end of the conference. We have over 50 sessions, 57 to be exact, on the program, and they cover a wide range of topics. Some of you may be here because you are interested in a particular sector or a topic, and there are sessions that range and cover topics such as biodiversity and climate change, to youth employment, health, private sector development, so a very wide range of topics. There are some of you who may be interested in particular research methods, and we have sessions on the future of impact evaluations, for example, or the future of evidence synthesis. And there may be some of you who are grappling with knowledge, evaluations, evidence as questions per se. And there are sessions on knowledge brokering, for example, on measuring development outcomes, or on the political economy of evidence use. It got me thinking over the course of the weekend. Evidence for development may seem like a fairly general topic. It really covers every area of our lives every single day. Some of you, I live in Romania at the moment, and some of you may have seen we are back at the top of the charts that nobody wants to be at the top of in terms of daily number of COVID-19 cases, and even worse, daily numbers of deaths relative to the population size, of course. And this is almost 18 months into the pandemic, and in a country where vaccines have been freely available for 9 months now and free of charge. But it got me thinking about this whole question of evidence. Why are we in the situation that we are in? There may be evidence around this issue that is not complete, not credible. Some people may not understand parts of it. Some people may not trust it. There are barriers to using evidence that we grapple with. And as I said, it does affect every aspect of our lives, and how we live and where we work and what our children are learning and how, and our health and access to services and food systems and the planet overall. I'm sure over the course of the next few days in the panels and the sessions here, you will be able to actively engage with the topic and share your own thoughts and perspectives. And we will walk away collectively, hopefully, with an enriched understanding, unpacking it slowly over these 8 days or so, and perhaps with ideas for future research and future events as well. Before I turn over to Howard White, let me introduce the rest of the panelists and also just tell you a little bit more about the features that are available to us over the course of the conference. So the fellow panelists are Howard White, who is the Chief Executive of the Campbell Collaboration, Pierre Jacquet, the President of GDN, the Global Development Network, Daniel Ortega, the Director of Impact Evaluations and Policy Learning at CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America, Jennifer Joel, who's a Program Fellow at the Hewlett Foundation, and we will have a short video address from Armida Alice-Chavana, the Executive Secretary of UNSCAP, who was not able to be with us live right now, but she has sent us a recorded short address. As I was mentioning earlier, we would very much like to have been face-to-face with all of you. That's not possible, so we selected this platform, which I know has been a bit of a challenge for some of you, but we selected this platform that allows us to come as close as possible to a real-life conference. So imagine you walk into a venue and there is a reception area. You go in the reception area, you check out the schedule and what sessions may be particularly interesting. You go and join the different sessions that are live, and you can see that. There's a networking area, and you can take advantage of that during the breaks, as well as an expo. And in the expo, there are different booths of different partners, as well as the posters, as I mentioned earlier, videos, and interesting publications and program overviews and resources. So do check them out. Because we are in very, very different time zones and scattered around the world, there is also a recording tab that you can see at the very bottom on the left, which will allow you to check out recordings of sessions that you may have missed because they happened in the middle of the night for you. So you can go back and see the recordings of those sessions that you perhaps are not able to see live. Please share your thoughts and comments in the Q&A and in the chat, and send us your ideas and takeaways from the sessions that you're attending. I'll come back at the end and mention a few other competitions that are taking place and culminating at the conference, and we're very, very excited to see how those unfold. But for now, let me turn over to Howard.
Okay, thank you, Ramona. And hopefully Ramona will leave so I can share my screen. We have limited space on the stage. Let's see how that works. You're still there. Ah, okay. No. With this platform, you get no idea of any feedback, so I have no idea if you can see my screen or not. But let's just hope so. Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone to What Was Global Summit 2021, Evidence for Development. This is the 5th year that we're doing a What Was Global Summit in different names, different guises with different organizations. And in this year, we're partnering with the Global Development Network, who we have a very close relationship with over a number of years. They host part of our secretariat. And with the theme of evidence for development. And as those who know me will know, I've spent most of my career working in international development. And so I'm very pleased that we have this as a central theme of the conference. This is Campbell's vision statement, better evidence for a better world. And that's why we're here. Why do we do research? Why are we interested in evidence? It's because we want to have a better world. We want to have better lives for the poor, disadvantaged, for girls that don't get to go to school, for women who spend hours collecting water or firewood and so on, for youth who can't find employment, for people who are homeless, and so on. So what's the evidence for is to make a better world. And I think that's really important to keep that theme in focus all through the conference and all the research we're looking at, to think about, well, how can this actually help improve people's lives? So that's evidence for development, and we've seen over the last 20 years, I call it the 4 waves of the evidence revolution, an increased focus on different types of evidence being used to inform policy and practice. And that's great, but what's particularly important, exciting to me about this particular event is the extent to which we've got evidence for development by developing country researchers. So 9 years ago in 2012, 3i organised joint with Campbell the first international symposium on evidence synthesis for development in Dhaka in Bangladesh, and it was a well-attended event, of a couple hundred people or so, from around nearly all from developing countries, but mainly listening to presentations by research from developed countries about how evidence synthesis and different evidence synthesis research they'd been doing. At that time, there were no Campbell reviews registered by developing country authors. That situation has changed dramatically in the last few years. We have now actually, if you look at the new titles being registered, new protocols being published, they're mainly from developing countries, particularly from India and China, some from Bangladesh, some from Uganda, reflecting to some extent the investments that Campbell itself has made in working research in those places, but also growing interest and capacity coming from other sources across the developing world. And that is, it's really very encouraging. I'm very happy to see that. I'm very actually proud to be associated with some of the high quality research being done by these research teams, and much of it is being presented on the program over the next week and a bit. So this conference really demonstrates the growth in research capacity for evidence synthesis. So particularly at Campbell, we work on evidence synthesis. This conference is also presenting other types of research, including primary studies. But if you look at the evidence synthesis content of the conference, you'll find it's very strong, and say mainly coming from developing country researchers, or done in collaboration, close collaboration with developing country researchers. For me, that's the main theme, is we're seeing this really strong emergence of research done in low middle income countries about development issues. But there are 4 waves of the evidence revolution, and the 4th one is knowledge brokering. And whilst we do see some knowledge brokering activities, so we have presentation, for example, by eBase from Cameroon on what they're doing with researchers around places in Africa. The fact is the institutionalization of use of evidence through proper systemized knowledge brokering, as happens to say in the UK with the What Works movement, isn't happening yet across Africa, across Asia. And so we still are in a situation where we've got increasing supply of research evidence from evidence synthesis, but the demand side remains too weak. And all events like this, I mean, since I've been organizing large conferences since the first one I did in the World Bank at the Impact Evaluation in 2008, and then the Cairo conference in 2009, and so on, always we say we plan to reach policymakers and practitioners as well as researchers, but always we tend to get more researchers than we do policymakers and practitioners. And it's a continual challenge to engage with policymakers and practitioners. But the proper institutionalization of use of evidence around what I call knowledge brokering platforms like evidence portals and guidelines and so on, really is an opportunity to do that. And there's some of that in this conference, but I would like to see more. And when we have the next couple of What Was Global Summits, hopefully we'll see more and more engagement around knowledge brokering also. That actually brings me to a quick plug I'm going to make for a rival event, which sounds a bit weird, but we also, Campbell Collaboration support Evidence-Based Healthcare Day, which is a new international day. This is the 2nd year we're doing it. It's a collaboration of different organizations working in evidence, and we're one of those organizations supporting it. And interestingly, and it chimes what Ramona was saying also, is that it's this year the theme of Evidence-Based Healthcare Day is the science communication in the pandemic, or particularly looking at infodemiology. So I had never heard of infodemiology before we started discussing the theme for this year's EBHC. And infodemiology basically is applying epidemiological principles to information. So where does information come from and how does it spread? And so this is, as Ramona was mentioning the problems in Romania right now. And the problem is, vaccines are available, but people are still not getting vaccinated, and that's not unique to Romania. It's in many countries now. You have people refuse to get vaccinated because they have concerns about safety and so on. So where are people getting this misinformation from? And so epidemiology generally is looking at where do people get their evidence. And that's very important for evidence-based organizations such as Campbell to really understand how people get evidence, what evidence they trust, so we can become those trusted sources of evidence. So I'll stop plugging that. We do have on Wednesday the 20th, which is Evidence-Based Healthcare Day, a couple of sessions on our program. They're there on the right of my slide, which are about health. We have other health sessions throughout the program, but these ones are actually on Evidence-Based Healthcare Day, so I'm highlighting them here. EBHC, go to the website, not during the conference, but in the evening or in the morning before it starts, has a lot of other events there you can see, so you can look there and events around the world. Mostly, unfortunately, clash with our event, but some of them don't. And also there's a series of blogs. Here's one that is led by Manisha in Campbell, South Asia, about evidence and mental health. So do go and check that out when you're not in the conference. So that's it. Please attend as many sessions as you can. Tell your friends and family also to attend, and colleagues, I meant to say colleagues and friends and family also to attend. And don't forget the posters. Ramona will come back and say more about the posters at the end of the opening. We have a very good selection, over 30 posters. You can go and see them in the poster room. You can look at the poster, but you also get a short, up to 5-minute video of the poster author presenting the poster. There's some very interesting topics there. They've been up in secret for the last few days. I've been able to look at them over the weekend, but now they're out in the public since this morning. So please do visit the poster session. Do tweet. The hashtags there on the bottom, hashtag evidence for dev. If you want to boost your followers, the best way to boost your followers is tweet during a conference and use the hashtag. Other people will retweet what you've tweeted, and you'll get followers that way. So it's a great opportunity to boost your Twitter presence by tweeting during a conference. So join the evidence revolution, better evidence for a better world. The next 10 days are all about that. And we look forward to seeing you in the various sessions. There's lots of good sessions. Do stay around and attend as many as you can. And use we have these side rooms where you can chat and interact and so on, make connection with people. Do try and use that. As Ramona said, we picked a platform, Hopin, which once you get in, is actually trying to make as much of a real conference experience as it can, even though we have to do it virtually. Thank you. And sorry, so now I'm pleased to hand over to Pierre Jacquet, President of GDN, our co-host for this event.
Thank you very much, Howard. You've said almost everything. Let me just start by saying it has been a pleasure to work with you and your team at Campbell's Collaboration to organize this Evidence for Development Global Summit. And what I will do basically is to try to sound a little bit more alarmist than you have, to the extent that, first of all, I think that this theme comes at a very important time when science seems to have lost the monopoly of legitimacy in shaping actionable knowledge. The once dominant view of knowledge as science has receded, and I believe this is a major challenge for social science research and for all of us interested in evidence for development. As you mentioned, this theme of evidence for development has been under focus and attention for many years now. So why is it that this agenda is still unfinished? Why do we still need such a conference to discuss it and promote it? Where and in what way has this agenda erred and failed? What should be done? And I hope that this conference will tackle these various issues and not simply note that evidence is important, that we have made progress in producing evidence, and that we focus increasingly on transmitting that evidence to policymakers. That we have been saying now for many years, and we need to go beyond that and see maybe more in depth why it doesn't really happen as we would like. I would like to emphasize what I think are 3 dimensions of this problem. One is that I believe that much more emphasis was put on evidence production as opposed to evidence use. And when use was considered, it was basically through production. One told people, oh, you need to produce things that are more user-friendly, that are better written, that can speak better to potential users. Well, I believe that use is a dynamics per se and needs to be studied as a real political economy subject. And use is not scientific. Use is basically a social and political process. It is a place for democratic debate. It involves not only understanding and interpreting evidence, but also drawing implications for actions and decisions. This cannot be thought as a linear deterministic process going from science to action. It is a constant interaction with democratic debate. And by the way, I don't think we are all clear about what we mean by evidence use, and maybe the conference will help us as well. What is it that we expect when we mention evidence use? What does it mean using evidence? Sometimes it looks as if we were a bit deterministic, with knowledge being produced about what works, and this is one of the titles of this summit. And then we expect people to apply what works. And we all know that politics doesn't work like this. We all know that there is a lot of unforeseen events that will actually create a lot of disturbances about what we think we know. And therefore, using evidence is rather mobilizing existing knowledge to help us mitigate the risks of actions. And it is a process. It is not simply applying something we know. And that is something that is hard to define, hard to work on probably, and it requires field interventions much more than we have been doing in the past. The second problem I would like to mention is the lack of ownership of evidence. Scientific truth is truth, unquestionably. But we all know now, and again, COVID-19 and the debate of vaccines and so on have provided another example of it. It cannot be imposed on people. It needs to make its way along processes that people willingly participate in. Social media have provided a lot of evidence that beliefs are built through social interaction as least as much as through sound knowledge. If we want these beliefs to be scientifically based, the scientific component must find its way in these social interactions as well. And this requires local ownership. Of course, we all know that there are outside experts who can collect data in very proficient ways, who may know actually developing countries better than the nationals, who may have developed expertise in analyzing causal relations through first-class academic research. But this is not the point. We need local ownership, and a major shortcoming of evidence production and use has been the lack of participation by local shareholders. There are many examples that developing the local contribution does have a major impact in orienting action in ways that are inspired by evidence. This is why we believe at GDN that building local research capacity, including data identification, data collection, data analysis, interpretation, including various forms of evaluative research, is so important, and this is at the core of our mission. We believe that the international community has failed to support it in ways that promote ownership. What has been mainly done is to train developing country researchers on issues and methods that are defined in developed countries. The latter may have a well-gained monopoly of high-quality technicity and innovation, but they have no monopoly about relevance, about research quality. None of these crucial attributes of research and evidence, quality and relevance, are mainly defined through technical proficiency. So in the end, we need to push toward a better deconnection of funding and conception of evidence production. As long as evidence funders also maintain the grip on the conception of the kind of evidence they fund and the methods to be used, there will be little relevant capacity building locally, little ownership of evidence, and that means for me, little evidence use. The third and final issue that I would like to emphasize is what I would call the illusion of determinism. And in a way, the same illusion of determinism is implicitly in the title of this What Works Global Summit, depending on how one interprets what works, obviously. What evidence does is to inform us about whether and ideally how past actions did work. and also hopefully and ideally why they did work. But this tells us little about the future. Another way to put it is that when decisions come to the fore, there is never enough evidence to mitigate all the risks of action and decision. And furthermore, as I said earlier, there will always be unforeseen events and behaviors that will introduce new challenges. And COVID-19, again, has provided ample evidence about that. So in thinking about the link between evidence and action, we should try to dispel the one-way link that is too often made. There are two dimensions that require more attention. One, I think, is widely recognized, that is the fact that action itself creates new evidence. So we can mobilize evaluative research to extract that evidence from actions and decisions that were undertaken. The second one is that action is not a one-step process. It always needs to adapt to ongoing unforeseen events, and that adaptation should also mobilize evidence. So the production of evidence related to ongoing action and programs, as opposed to ex ante evaluation, ex post evaluation, or simply dry monitoring of indicators, this conjunction of evidence productions during action is also a dimension that should receive more attention. In partnership with the EIB, European Investment Bank, GDN has just completed a 3-year program that has tested some of these dimensions, and the results have been very positive, and we'll have opportunities to discuss that later during the conference. So again, I hope we'll have many opportunities to discuss these various points. I didn't want to sound negative, but I think there are very specific issues that deserve a lot of attention. And as Howard did, I invite all of you to join us as often as you can during the numerous plenary and parallel sessions of this conference. So let me stop there for now and give the floor to Daniel.
Thank you very much, Pierre. Well, I too am very excited to be here once again at the Evidence for Development What Works Global Summit to share a few words about our perspective on some of the challenges for increasing the influence of scientific evidence in decision making, and also, well, the way forward that we envision and that we are working. But I'm also really interested in hearing and learning from others' perspectives and experiences, because there are so many interesting sessions on the program, and so I really hope that we all get a chance to make the best of this great event. So I want to briefly mention 2 areas that I believe can make us move forward in less developed parts of the world in a significant way. The first is fostering public institutions that learn, and the second is what I call North-South collaboration in evidence translation. So first, public institutions that learn. At CAF, we have worked with over 200 Latin American, mostly public institutions, looking to support them in the process of designing and implementing impact evaluations. Through our competitive annual request for proposals, we have considered over 600 applications over the past 5 years from local, regional, and national government agencies. And if I had to say, use one word to mark this track record, it would be heterogeneity. There are just huge differences across institutions in their readiness to undertake quality research projects. So our processes and our academic incentives tend to lead us to select the most promising projects, the ones that have better data, that have the best defined implementation process, the best academic support, the best trained staff, and also, very importantly, the most aligned leadership. So we typically tend to support the organizations that will allow us to undertake the impact evaluations with the best identification strategies. Now, doing this is important and it's necessary because building the evidence base is one of the pillars of the evidence architecture that we are striving for. But there's a problem with this. And much too often, and this is certainly true for us at CAF, by choosing the most technically promising, we also leave the weakest institutions out. And the overwhelming majority of institutions, at least in Latin America, which is where we do all of our work basically, have weak or non-existent learning capabilities. What does this mean? This means that they don't always have a clear understanding of a policy's theory of change. They have no systems for tracking the implementation of a policy and generating regular reports on the processes and the challenges. They have no idea on what the most informative, intermediate, and outcome indicators might be. They have no process for digesting and learning from whatever information gets generated implementation. So our selection process, while is effective in turning out the best evaluations, perpetuates the differences in learning capabilities across institutions. So I think that we should be able to aspire to a wider range of institutions that recognize the value of keeping good records, that seek to devote some resources to visualizing and analyzing their data, that are willing to share and learn from it, even if it's not to undertake a randomized evaluation. So I think that the potential gains from small changes in organizations' learning efforts can be quite large. So I think that in this space, reducing inequality across institutions can actually increase overall efficiency. So for example, in health or education, sometimes municipalities can share the role of provider with the national government. And certainly a more capable local government will help the nationally administered services as well. There are significant complementarities there. So also part of this agenda could be to bridge the space between public institutions and data analysts and scientists that are out there. There are really great gains from trade that are currently underexploited. So at CAF, we have an initiative led by the research department at CAF called Hands-On Data. It brings public institutions with data-related needs and together with data science teams to collaborate on projects that generate solution prototypes for very specific public policy problems. And these collaborations have turned out to be very cost-effective, and they can lead to institutional relationships that outlive the original project, which is obviously to everyone's gain. So basically, we need to pay more attention to institutions that are behind, and sometimes far behind, in their potential for producing high-quality causal evidence, because they probably manage just as much or even more resources than the more sophisticated institutions. So let me turn to the second idea that I wanted to mention today, and what I'm just labeling North-South collaboration for evidence translation. And just last night, I was telling a relative about this idea, and she stopped me to explain to her what I meant by evidence translations. It's the work of making scientific evidence accessible to someone with no training. So it's just interesting how even our terminology sometimes needs translation. Now, there is, as Howard was saying, and also Pierre, the real progress in evidence synthesis. The Campbell collaboration, of course, 3IE, and many other organizations have played a major role in this, but a larger effort, I believe, is still needed on a global scale. It is actually especially urgent for the developing world, where a good part of the best evaluation research is being fielded but where there's the least public debate about the scientific merits of different policy options. The What Works network in the UK, for example, is an example of the kind of work which by its very nature is globally relevant. So a cycle that includes the production of new evidence, synthesis and translation, dissemination, then implementation, and again evaluation, describes in some ways the ideal policy learning cycle, where you use some of the evidence, but then you create some more knowledge along the way, much like Pierre was just describing. But translation plays a really significant role because it's the only way to facilitate adoption and use of this evidence by those who are far from the original evidence. Some developing countries or some institutions in these countries might be quite interested in seeking out the best available evidence for their policy options, but really find it inaccessible or difficult to contextualize. So I think that we can collaborate and follow the lead of some of the existing evidence portals and ensure that they are accessible to all audiences in every language, updated regularly, and flexible enough to be clear to the user about the specific evidence that might be locally relevant in a given context, and also for which policies or places there's just not much to go on. That's just as important. And so, as I said, some rich countries have made strides, but the developing world really falls behind, even though the marginal cost to making these resources available to them is minimal. We at CAF have led a modest effort in translating some dissemination products from our partners into Spanish, and this has been quite successful, suggesting that there might be quite a high demand globally. So I think international organizations can play an important role in promoting this type of collaboration. Of course, and it's been just mentioned briefly, policy influence from the supply side of evidence is not without challenges. It requires a different type of stakeholder engagement and possibly significant innovation in communication strategies. It's already been mentioned, over the last 10 months or so, the importance of public opinion for the realization of the ultimate benefits of vaccinations has become quite apparent. So the rapid production, dissemination, and uptake by the relevant policy actors around the globe has not been enough. As we know, still many individuals that are opting out against the recommendation of the best scientific evidence. So this leads us to think that, many of us have traditionally thought of the users of scientific evidence only as those that are making decisions on programs or policies affecting the public. But these last months are suggesting that in some areas, the beneficiaries, the ultimate beneficiaries of policies, may also need to be persuaded on the state of our understanding. So I really hope that we can put our heads together and find ways of supporting weaker institutions, and also to do a better job of making scientific evidence more accessible to our communities. And I think there's a lot that we can still do for that. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer.
Thanks very much, Daniel and Pierre and Howard. It's actually a pleasure just listening to all of you talk about your work. My name is Jennifer Jewell. I'm a program fellow with I was going to say Global Development and Population, which is what a lot of people know, but recently we named Gender Equity and Governance Program at the Hewlett Foundation. And we are excited to be a partner in this process, particularly the work on evidence for development that has been done and is being done by GDN, by Campbell Collaboration and other organizations. I would highlight on just 3 points. A lot of the things I could have spoken about have been discussed by other speakers. But first, I want to start with a a comment made by Howard about evidence use and evidence translation that is not just scientific, but it's political, it's social, and I would also say it's cultural, that there is a tension between culture, or I would say the anthropologist, and science, particularly when it comes to evidence use and the way and manner it has been discussed before now. And that also feed into Daniel's comment about the need to identify the unique situations of countries and other contexts where there might not be as much technical expertise as we have in the global north, or in contexts where there is extensive resources to support scientific knowledge production, or in which the policy process or even the citizenry or the beneficiaries, if we will, are well versed in policy debate. However, that is where the need is most acute. And I would dare to say, particularly in the global south. So Hadi Hewlett Foundation, one of our key areas of work right now is actually what we speak about it in terms of shifting agenda setting power and not just shifting funding. I know of recent there is a discussion, or I wouldn't say debate, but discussion in philanthropy about decolonizing the philanthropy. But with that is also the need not just to shift funding to the global south or to support evidence generation or evidence use or evidence translation, but to also shift the agenda setting power to the global south in a way that recognizes the knowledge systems and the fact that individuals in lower resource contexts are experts and specialists on their own issue. And with adequate support, they can actually generate the sort of contextual knowledge and highly scientific evidence that could support evidence for improved living conditions and livelihoods, which, in my opinion, is really the main purpose of generating evidence. Secondly, I would like to talk about I'd like to talk about incentive structure. I would say in my work, one of the things I always say is when we talk about the global south, we need to understand that there are incentive structures that determine evidence use, even when it is properly translated or even when it is highly technical. So because of that, at the Hewlett Foundation, we are really aiming to increase our support for organizations, particularly in the global south, that are not just working on evidence generation, but advocacy, that are finding creative ways to engage policymakers or other decision makers in a way that motivates the uptake of evidence and not just the generation. Then the last thing I'd like to discuss is about the need for more global North and South collaboration. And I was very happy when Pierre and Daniel and Howard actually mentioned this. I would say that it's not just a one-directional relationship, but it is bi-directional. As much as I would acknowledge that there is definitely knowledge to be translated, technical knowledge, technical expertise in evaluation in RCT to be translated from the global north to the global south. I would also say that there is a certain knowledge of the context. There's a certain awareness of the social milieu that individuals or organizations or evidence practitioners in the global south can actually share, and that would thicken the analysis of technical experts in the global north. And at the US Foundation, we are really eagerly looking forward to supporting such collaboration. And thank you also to GDN for putting this amazing summit together. I am looking forward to learning so much. And thank you for all the good work you're doing in shifting and moving the field of evidence-informed policymaking or evidence for development further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. We are running just slightly over the time that we had allocated for the opening plenary. I will just play the short video address from Armida Lischabana, and then wrap up and send you to the 2 parallel sessions that are supposed to start. They won't be cut off, so if you start 5 minutes late, you can also go 5 minutes late. Not a problem at all. Let me share the video.
President Global Development Network, Mr. Howard White, Chief Executive Officer, Campbell Collaboration, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to join you at the Global Development Conference 2021. I would like to thank the Global Development Network and the Campbell Collaboration for the kind invitation. The Leave No One Behind ambition of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has challenged policymakers and practitioners to understand the complexity of sustainable development and the interlinkages between human well-being and prosperity, resiliency, and environmental sustainability, especially at the outset of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic. The implementation of the 2030 Agenda also requires development policies committed to addressing the current development challenges and needs, with policies supported by robust data, statistics, and evidence base. As the COVID-19 pandemic has entered into its second year, countries are still grappling with the surge of cases due to the new variant, not to mention its devastating socio-economic impacts. It is slowing progress towards achieving sustainable development goals. The pandemic has also revealed chronic development fault lines, harmful impacts on the most vulnerable, rising inequality, and extreme poverty. At the same time, it has exacerbated the pre-existing risks and vulnerabilities and created new forms of development challenges due to a lack of resilience and investment in people and planet. Countries need to transform into an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable economy to address 3 sets of development policy challenges to building back better, namely, widen inequality gaps that threaten social cohesion and stability, structural disruption caused by the pandemic and post-pandemic transformation, and the impact of digitalization on economic opportunity and human capital formation. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to the pandemic, many countries continue to experience unprecedented natural disaster due to climate change and the increase in extreme temperature fluctuations. By the end of 2020, the Asia-Pacific region was responsible for more than half the global greenhouse gas emission. It will critically impact the global efforts to mitigate anthropogenic climate change and keep global temperature increase within the 1.5 degrees Celsius. We are at an imminent risk of hitting that 1.5 degrees in the near future. The only way to prevent exceeding this threshold is by urgently stepping up our efforts and pursuing the most ambitious path through sustainable economic models. We must focus on 3 core areas of inclusiveness, resilience, and sustainability for the post-pandemic recovery and beyond. First, by building more inclusive societies, promoting employment-led recovery, and closing social protection coverage gaps. Second, by building more resilient economies, by ensuring countries prepared for climate disaster health emergencies and creating more resilient regional supply chain. And third, by building a more sustainable environment, by incorporating environmental sustainability into business investment processes and accelerating green-blue public investment, including clean energy and climate-resilient infrastructure. Digitalization, innovative technologies, fundamental to support these core areas, must be mainstream, and sufficient financial resources must be secured while tackling the pandemic and climate crisis. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, post-pandemic recovery not only poses challenges, but offers opportunities for countries to recover better together. The multifaceted nature of the development challenges means that data and statistics have a vital role to play, and transformative solutions needs to be backed by evidence. This conference provides a timely opportunity for all stakeholders to discuss priority policy areas and share lessons and insights on new development strategies and evidence-based solutions. We stand ready to further support policymakers and stakeholders with innovative and interactive tools to design and implement policies based on robust data and evidence. I wish you a very successful conference. Thank you very much.
All right, so Armida has also left us with a very long list of topics on the development research agenda, on which indeed policymakers and implementers need inputs, data and evidence of all kind. I wanted, before we turn over to the parallel sessions, just to mention that there is a competition which is also culminating at the conference, the Global Development Awards. It's been running for 20 years. The finalists will present during the sessions at the conference, and the winners will be selected and announced at the closing plenary. There is also a video competition on global transitions, co-organized by GDN and the French Development Agency. Those videos are also in a booth in the expo area, and you can find them and have a look and see which one is your favorite and if it aligns with the choices of the jury. I mentioned in the beginning the posters, and please vote on them. We will also ask you to vote on your favorite panels and presenters. The majority of the presenters on our program are from developing countries, and this is indeed a trademark of these conferences that we organize. I wanted to close by thanking the supporters of this conference. Without them, of course, this wouldn't have been possible. You have heard from the representatives of CAF and the Hewlett Foundation, who have provided funding for this conference. Apart from them, the American Institutes for Research and the French Development Agency are supporting our two organizations, the Campbell Collaboration and GDN, and therefore also this event. But apart from them, there are also several organizations who have not only provided funding, but they have put together very, very interesting sessions and panels that you will find in the conference program. And they include the International Development Research Center from Canada, the Center for Effective Global Action from the University of Berkeley, the Green Climate Fund in South Korea, the German Institute for Development Evaluation, DEVAL, JICA from Japan, CPEC, one of the leading think tanks in Argentina and Latin America, and the WHO. So with that, let me thank you all for joining us for this opening plenary and inviting you to join the panels, which are starting. And please do come back over the course of the next few days. Thank you so much again. Have a wonderful 8 days of the conference.